The first shovel of dirt hit his chest, and Michael froze. He wasn't supposed to be awake. He wasn't supposed to hear them. Lying in the cold, damp hole that smelled of earth and betrayal, he fought to keep his breathing shallow. Every muscle in his body screamed to move, to fight, to live. But instinct told him, stay still. Play dead. Are you sure he's dead? A familiar voice asked, trembling yet cruelly determined. It was Anna, his wife. Michael's mind raced. How had it come to this? Another voice answered, rough and impatient, does it matter? We're doing this now. Cover him up. The man Anna had been meeting in secret, the one Michael had suspected but never dared to confront. His name was Daniel, his supposed best friend. Michael's heart pounded against his ribs, a desperate drumbeat trapped under layers of fear and loose soil. Each heartbeat felt louder than the last. Could they hear it? Would they notice he was still alive? Another heavy thud of dirt fell over him. Then another. The weight began to build on his chest, pressing down like a slow, suffocating curse. Above him, their whispers floated through the night air, mixing with the cool scent of fresh earth and dying grass. I can't believe it's finally happening, Anna said, her voice cracking with a sick kind of excitement. We'll be free, Daniel replied. No more hiding. No more lies. Just us. Michael's stomach twisted. Every memory, every touch, every whispered, I love you, a lie. All of it. The dirt kept coming, heavier now. Grit filled his ears, his nose, even his mouth when he gasped too sharply. He fought the urge to cough. One sound, one small movement, and it would all be over. Think he'll be found? Anna asked. Daniel laughed, a short, heartless sound. Not a chance. By the time anyone comes looking, he'll be long gone. Michael squeezed his eyes shut. Gone. Forgotten. But not yet. Through the muffled darkness, he heard them shuffle away. Their footsteps faded, leaving him alone beneath the cold sky, and the colder earth. At first, he panicked. Buried alive. The words screamed inside his mind, growing louder, faster, more frantic with each second. He clawed at the soil above him, but it was too heavy. It shifted and packed down against him, stealing his breath. He was dying. Alone. Betrayed. Tears blurred his vision, though he couldn't tell where the tears ended and the damp earth began. He thought of his parents, his childhood dog, the dusty football trophies in his closet. Things he hadn't thought about in years. Faces flashed before his mind, faces he would never see again. No. No. He refused. Michael forced himself to stop. To think. Breathing shallowly, he remembered something, a survival story he'd read long ago. If you're buried alive, stay calm. Slow your breathing. Find a pocket of air. Move carefully. Panic kills faster than the earth. With slow, deliberate movements, Michael twisted his head, trying to find an air pocket. A small blessing, they hadn't buried him too deep. Maybe they were scared to dig too long, scared of getting caught. He flexed his fingers, moving them inch by inch upward. Dirt rained down, but it wasn't packed tight enough yet to trap him completely. He could get out. Maybe. If he was smart. If he was strong. If he didn't lose hope. It took hours. Or maybe it just felt that way. Every small movement drained his energy. Every breath burned his lungs. Dirt filled his clothes, scratched his skin raw, filled every crease and crevice. His heart hammered, slowing and racing in dizzying cycles. At one point, a fat worm wriggled against his cheek. He didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to waste the energy. Inch by inch, breath by breath, Michael pushed upward, shifting the earth aside. The weight grew lighter. The darkness grew thinner. The scent of fresh air grew closer. Finally, his hand broke through the surface. Cold night air kissed his dirt-caked fingers. Michael gasped. He dug harder, faster, adrenaline giving him the strength of a man with nothing left to lose. With one final, desperate push, he tore himself free from the shallow grave, collapsing onto the ground under a sky so full of stars it felt unreal. Alive. Barely. He lay there for a long moment, staring at the stars. The same stars Anna and Daniel had walked under together, whispering their secret plans. He should run. Find help. Call the police. But Michael didn't move. Instead, he thought. Listened. Planned. This wasn't over. When Michael finally stumbled back toward the edge of the woods, his body screamed with pain. His skin was torn and bloodied, his clothes ripped to shreds. But his mind was sharper than it had ever been. He had something better than anger. He had clarity. And he had a plan. He would make them pay. Not with fists. Not with screaming confrontations or courtrooms. He would destroy them the way they had tried to destroy him, quietly, completely, without mercy. They thought he was dead. He would let them think that. For now. Michael needed a place to hide. A way to gather strength. He couldn't go back to the house. They'd notice. They'd come after him. Instead, he made his way to an old abandoned cabin at the far edge of town, a place he and Daniel had discovered as teenagers during one of their so-called adventures. It was poetic, in a way. Hiding in a place Daniel had once called their secret fortress. Michael found an old cot inside. Collapsing onto it, he let exhaustion drag him under. But even in sleep, he didn't find peace. He dreamt of hands dragging him down, of Anna's laughter echoing through the dark, of Daniel's smug smile. He woke up with a jolt, drenched in sweat, heart hammering. It was still dark. The world hadn't ended. And neither had he. Over the next few days, Michael stayed hidden. He rationed what little food he found. He stole clothes from a donation bin nearby to replace his ruined ones. He listened, watched. Waited. He needed information. He needed leverage. He needed to know why. Because what hurt even more than the betrayal, more than the attempted murder, was the not knowing. Had Anna ever loved him at all? Had Daniel ever been his friend? Had everything, every memory, been a lie? One night, slipping through the shadows, Michael made his way back to his neighborhood. He stayed hidden among the trees, close enough to see, but far enough not to be seen. And what he saw broke his heart all over again. Anna and Daniel. Laughing on his porch. Holding hands. Living as if he had never existed. Michael clenched his fists, the dirt under his nails biting into his skin. But he didn't cry. He didn't scream. He watched. And he planned. Because some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. And Michael had crawled out of his own grave to make sure they paid. The cold bit into Michael's skin as he crouched in the thick underbrush, hidden by night and anger. He watched them, the two people he had loved most in the world, living a life that was supposed to be his. Anna laughed at something Daniel whispered in her ear. Michael's jaw tightened. He hadn't heard her laugh like that in years. Was it ever real? Or had she been laughing behind his back all along? Michael drew a shaky breath, forcing his rage back under control. He couldn't afford to lose it. Not now. Not yet. Revenge wasn't about rage. It was about patience. Precision. He would not lash out like a wounded animal. He would strike like a hunter. Silent. Deadly. Final. For the next few days, Michael lived like a ghost. He moved through town unseen, sticking to shadows, staying away from cameras and crowds. He scavenged what he could, stolen granola bars, a few bottles of water, an old hoodie someone had left at a park bench. The hunger gnawed at him, but it was nothing compared to the burning need for justice that filled his chest. Michael wasn't just surviving. He was preparing. He needed to know everything. Every move they made. Every lie they told. Every secret they kept hidden from the world. Because secrets had power. And Michael was about to become very, very powerful. One rainy evening, huddled under a bus shelter, Michael spotted a chance. Anna's car pulled into the grocery store parking lot, windshield wipers beating in frantic rhythm. She got out, rushing toward the entrance, purse clutched tight against her body. Daniel stayed behind, slouched low in the passenger seat, tapping away at his phone. Michael's mind worked quickly. If Anna was shopping, she'd be gone at least half an hour. Daniel would be distracted. This was his chance. Michael moved fast, his steps hidden by the noise of the rain. Within seconds, he was beside the car, low and invisible. Daniel never even looked up. Michael crouched near the back of the vehicle, where he found what he was looking for, a small magnetic GPS tracker clipped under the bumper. Of course they had one. They needed to make sure Michael's car was found abandoned. Needed to make the police believe he had run off or died somewhere far from here. Michael smiled grimly. Good. Let them think that. He carefully removed the tracker and slipped it into his pocket. Then he vanished back into the shadows, unseen. Now he had freedom. They had no idea where he was. No way to track him. And now, he could move on to the next phase of his plan. Michael needed evidence. Proof of what they had done. Because revenge was satisfying, but exposing them to the world? Making them face the horror of their own sins, tearing down the perfect little life they thought they'd built on his grave? That was real justice. Michael's first step was the old house at the end of Hemlock Road. Once a lively family home, it had been abandoned after a fire gutted the inside years ago. The town kids said it was haunted, and no one dared to go near it. Perfect. Michael slipped inside through a broken window, careful of the sharp glass. The smell of smoke and mold was overwhelming, but he ignored it. He needed a base. A place to plan, to rest, to think. Using a broken chair and an old mattress dragged from upstairs, he set up a small, hidden nest in one of the back rooms. It wasn't much. But it was his. And it was enough. That night, lying awake in the darkness, Michael replayed every conversation he could remember. Every suspicious glance. Every whispered phone call. Every moment when Anna had seemed distant. When Daniel had seemed too interested in Anna's life. When Michael himself had brushed aside his gut instincts because he trusted them both too much. Never again. Trust was dead. Love was dead. Only the plan remained. The next morning, Michael began his surveillance. Dressed in stolen clothes, a cap pulled low over his eyes, he blended into the background of the town. Just another face in the crowd. He watched Anna go to work at the local real estate office, smiling brightly for clients, playing the perfect grieving widow. He watched Daniel meet with friends at the bar, laughing, telling wild stories about Michael's disappearance. They think he ran off, Daniel joked one night, lifting his beer. Told you he couldn't handle pressure. Everyone laughed. Michael didn't. He memorized everything. Every lie. Every weakness. 3 nights later, Michael made his first move. Under cover of darkness, he slipped into Anna and Daniel's new shared house. The front door was easy, Daniel never bothered to lock it properly. Michael moved silently, his heart steady, his hands sure. In the living room, he found a framed photo on the mantel. Anna and Daniel, smiling, arms around each other, standing in front of the very same fireplace where Michael used to sit every Christmas. Without hesitation, he turned the photo face down. A small act. Petty, maybe. But it was only the beginning. In the bedroom, he found something better. Anna's phone. Left carelessly charging on the nightstand. Michael picked it up carefully, scrolling through the notifications. Messages. Photos. Plans. Evidence. But the best part? Anna had the habit of recording voice memos to herself, reminders, thoughts, ideas. Michael found one from 2 nights ago. Shaking slightly, he hit play. Anna's voice filled the room, low and urgent. Remember to delete texts. Make sure Daniel gets rid of the shovel. Can't risk anyone finding it. Michael smiled grimly. Got you. He uploaded the voice memo to a hidden cloud account he had created at a library computer earlier that week. Backup. Always have backup. Then he slipped out the way he came, leaving no trace behind. By the time Anna and Daniel realized something was wrong, it would be far too late. The next day, Michael began leaving them small reminders. The first was a dirt-stained glove left on the driver's seat of Anna's car. The second was a set of muddy footprints leading to their front door, and stopping. The third was a short, simple note tucked into Daniel's wallet. You missed a spot. No threats. No names. Just enough to make their hearts pound. To make them doubt what they saw. To make them fear the impossible. That Michael wasn't dead. That he was watching. Waiting. Planning. And it worked. He watched from the trees as Anna and Daniel argued violently on the porch. He saw the fear in Anna's eyes, the way her hands trembled. He saw the way Daniel snapped at her, angry, panicked. Good. Let them turn on each other. Let them destroy themselves from the inside out. Michael knew he couldn't drag this out forever. Sooner or later, they would go to the police, or run, or do something desperate. He needed a final move. A checkmate. And he found it in the last place he expected, the lawyer's office. One afternoon, Anna had a meeting with the family attorney, discussing Michael's estate. Michael, curious, followed her inside, blending with the people in the waiting room. And that's when he heard it. Once the death certificate is finalized, the lawyer said, the insurance payout should come through. Substantial amount. You're looking at 7 figures. 7 figures. $1 million life insurance policy Michael had taken out years ago to protect Anna if anything ever happened to him. And now they had tried to kill him for it. Michael's jaw clenched. But inside, he smiled. Because insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted homicide, it was more than enough to bury them legally. And this time, he would be the one digging the graves. That night, Michael wrote a letter. Carefully. Precisely. He included copies of Anna's voice memo, photos of the muddy footprints, Daniel's texts boasting about Michael's disappearance, and a detailed account of everything he had witnessed. Then he sent it to the police. To the insurance company. To Anna's boss. To Daniel's employer. And to the local newspaper. By morning, their lives would be over. Just like they had tried to end his. Michael sat in the ruins of the burned-out house, watching the first light of dawn break over the horizon. He felt no joy. No triumph. Only a deep, quiet satisfaction. Justice wasn't loud. It didn't scream or boast. It simply was. Michael leaned back, letting the light wash over him. He was a ghost no longer. He was a survivor. And the real story, the one Anna and Daniel would never live down, was just beginning. The town of Westbridge woke up to a storm. Not of rain, but of scandal. By noon, Michael's carefully planted seeds had exploded into a wildfire. Local police cruisers lined Anna and Daniel's driveway. Reporters hovered near the sidewalks like vultures, snapping photos, whispering into cameras. Neighbors who once smiled and waved now watched from behind curtains, their faces twisted in shock and judgment. Inside the house, chaos reigned. Anna sat on the couch, pale as a ghost, her hands shaking uncontrollably around a cold coffee cup she couldn't remember making. Daniel paced the floor like a caged animal, barking into his phone, his voice rising higher with every call that went to voicemail. "They can't prove anything," Daniel hissed. "Stay calm. Just stay calm." But Anna wasn't listening. Her mind was spinning, rewinding back to the tiny, mocking notes. The muddy footprints. The missing glove. He's alive. He knows. He's coming. She felt it in her bones. And for the first time since Michael's death, Anna realized something terrifying. They hadn't just failed to kill him. They had created something worse than death. They had created an enemy who had nothing left to lose. Michael watched it all unfold from a safe distance, tucked into the thick woods across from their house. He saw Anna flinch every time a reporter shouted her name. He saw Daniel lose his temper with the police, almost daring them to arrest him. Good. Let them rot in fear a little longer. Michael wasn't done yet. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making them face everything they had tried to bury. Including him. Later that night, as the town settled into uneasy sleep, Michael moved again. This time, he wasn't just leaving hints. He was hunting. He slipped through the darkness like a shadow, crossing fields and empty streets until he reached the small storage unit Daniel rented under a fake name. Michael had found the lease papers tucked away in Daniel's glove compartment days ago. Funny how careless people got when they thought their problems were 6 feet under. Michael picked the lock easily, a skill he'd learned back when he still cared about things like home improvement and weekend projects. The metal door creaked open with a groan. Inside, it smelled of damp concrete and cold metal. And death. Michael's flashlight swept across the space, revealing stacks of boxes, tools, and... He froze. In the corner, half covered by a blue tarp, was something unmistakable. A shovel. Still caked with dried mud. And beside it, a pair of boots. Michael's stomach twisted. The boots were his. The ones he had worn the night Daniel and Anna had lured him out to the woods under the pretense of a surprise anniversary celebration. The night they had hit him over the head. The night they had buried him. Alive. Michael clenched his fists, forcing down the wave of memory. Focus. He snapped photos of everything, the boots, the shovel, the tarp. Then he found something even better. A metal safe, small but heavy, shoved under a shelf. He pried it open with a crowbar he'd brought just in case. Inside were stacks of cash, and a black notebook. Michael opened it, thumbing through page after page of Daniel's messy scrawl. Dates. Names. Transactions. Bribes. Insurance agents paid off. Cops looking the other way. Even a few local officials bought to smooth over Michael's upcoming death investigation. The corruption was deeper than he thought. Michael's jaw tightened. They hadn't just tried to kill him. They had tried to erase him. By dawn, Michael had everything he needed. Evidence. Photos. The notebook. He wasn't just going to destroy Anna and Daniel. He was going to expose the entire rotten system that had helped them. But first, he had one last visit to make. To the place where it had all begun. The woods were quiet that morning, heavy with fog and the damp smell of earth. Michael walked the trail slowly, every step a memory. The laughter of Anna and Daniel leading him deeper into the trees. The sudden, brutal pain at the back of his head. The darkness swallowing him whole as the dirt rained down. Michael stopped at a clearing. The grave was still there, a shallow depression in the earth, half hidden by dead leaves and new grass. He stood over it, feeling the ghost of his own fear, his own desperation. Then he dropped to one knee and pressed a small, homemade plaque into the ground. It read, "Here lies betrayal. Not forgotten. Not forgiven." Michael stood, brushing dirt from his hands. There were no tears. No speeches. Just the cold, quiet promise of justice. Meanwhile, Anna was unraveling. By mid-morning, she had packed 2 suitcases and was throwing clothes wildly into them, her mind a frantic blur of plans and regrets. "We have to leave," she gasped to Daniel, who stared at her with hollow eyes. "We'll go somewhere, anywhere. Change our names, start over." "You think that'll stop him?" Daniel snarled, yanking the suitcase from her hands. "He's already won. Look at us. We're finished." Anna broke then, sobbing into her hands, her whole body shaking. Michael watched from the window, invisible behind the curtains. He almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The next move had to be perfect. Clean. Final. Michael needed a way to force Anna and Daniel into the open, to make them confess everything, publicly, without any chance of escape. And he knew exactly how. That night, the town hall hosted the annual Founders' Day banquet, a big event, filled with important people, news cameras, and nosy neighbors. Michael sent anonymous invitations to Anna and Daniel. Elegant cards, black ink on white linen paper. "Come celebrate your success. Your audience awaits." Panic would force them there. Fear would control them. And Michael would deliver the final blow. At 7 p.m. sharp, the banquet hall filled with Westbridge's finest. Tables decorated with candles and flowers. Music drifting softly through the air. Michael moved among them unseen, wearing a simple waiter's uniform he had borrowed from the back of the catering truck. He carried a tray, but his real cargo was tucked under his jacket. A small portable projector. And a USB drive containing every damning piece of evidence he had gathered. At 7:30 p.m., Anna and Daniel stumbled in, pale and trembling. They looked like ghosts themselves. As they made their way to the back of the room, Michael moved swiftly to the podium. The mayor, drunk on champagne and self-importance, barely noticed as Michael plugged the projector into the hall's main screen. Lights dimmed. Music faded. And then, the first photo flashed onto the giant screen. The muddy shovel. The bloodied boots. The voice recording of Anna whispering about deleting texts echoed through the hall. A stunned silence fell over the crowd. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Gasps filled the air. And then, Michael's final gift. A short video, Daniel, drunken and smug, bragging to friends about solving his little problem for a big payday. Anna screamed. Daniel lunged for the projector, but too late. Police officers, already suspicious from Michael's earlier letters, moved in fast, slamming Daniel face first onto the table and snapping cuffs around his wrists. Anna collapsed onto the floor, sobbing hysterically. The crowd erupted into chaos, shouting, flashing cameras, frantic whispers. And in the center of it all, Michael stood, calm and invisible. A ghost no longer. Outside, as Daniel and Anna were dragged into squad cars, Michael slipped into the shadows. He didn't need to see their trials. He didn't need to hear their guilty pleas. He had already won. He had survived. And he had made sure the world knew the truth. Later, standing on a hill overlooking the town, Michael finally allowed himself a real smile. Not a smile of victory. Not a smile of revenge. But a smile of freedom. He was alive. And for the first time in a long, long time, he was truly free. The night Daniel and Anna were arrested, Michael thought he could finally breathe. He thought it was over. But the thing about digging up graves, sometimes, you uncover things you never meant to find. For the first time in months, Michael slept soundly. No nightmares of dirt closing in. No whispers in the dark. Just quiet. He woke up before sunrise, took a deep breath of the crisp morning air, and decided. Today, I start over. He packed a small bag with the little money he had left, the black notebook filled with Daniel's crimes, and a worn map of towns nearby. A new life awaited him. Or so he believed. Michael's plan was simple. Disappear. Let Anna and Daniel rot in prison. Let the world forget. He had survived the worst. He deserved peace. But fate had other plans. As he walked through the forest, heading toward the next town, a sound made him freeze. A twig snapping. Someone was following him. Michael crouched low behind a fallen tree, his heart hammering. Footsteps crunched closer. Slow, deliberate. Michael's mind raced. Had Daniel hired someone? Was this another betrayal waiting to happen? Was he still not safe? The figure stepped into view. A woman. Not Anna. Not anyone he recognized. She looked about 30, with a worn leather jacket, dirt-streaked jeans, and a determined look in her sharp brown eyes. She spotted him instantly. And to Michael's horror, she smiled. "Found you," she said softly. Michael stood up slowly, keeping distance between them. "Who are you?" he demanded. The woman raised her hands, showing she had no weapon. "My name's Claire," she said. "I'm your sister." The world tilted. Michael staggered back a step, disbelief flooding him. "I don't have a sister," he said. "My parents, they adopted you," Claire interrupted gently. "They never told you the truth." Michael's mouth went dry. Claire reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled photo. A black and white snapshot of two small children, a boy and a girl, sitting on the steps of a worn-out farmhouse. The boy was unmistakably him. Same dark hair. Same crooked smile. The girl was Claire. "We were separated when we were 4, she said. "Adopted out to different families. I've been looking for you ever since." Michael's head spun. How could this be real? Why now? After everything? And yet, deep down, something about Claire felt right. Familiar. A thread pulled tight inside him loosened slightly. Family. Real family. Maybe he wasn't as alone as he thought. Over a cheap diner breakfast, Claire told him everything. Their real parents had died in a fire when they were toddlers. The foster system had separated them. Michael had been adopted quickly, a lucky case. Claire hadn't been so lucky. She bounced from home to home, always searching, always hoping. When she saw the news about Daniel and Anna's scandal, something clicked. She recognized Michael's face immediately. She followed the trail of whispers and rumors until it led her here. "I know it's a lot," Claire said, watching him carefully. "But you're not alone, Michael." "Not anymore." Michael didn't answer. He stared out the window, the coffee in front of him growing cold. For the first time in days, weeks, maybe even years, a fragile thing bloomed in his chest. Hope. But hope is a dangerous thing. Especially in a town like Westbridge. 2 days later, Michael and Claire decided to leave town together. They had a plan. Find a quiet place where no one knew their names. Start fresh. As they loaded their few belongings into Claire's beat-up truck, Michael caught a glimpse of something shiny under the driver's seat. Curious, he reached down. It was a small silver locket. He opened it. Inside was a photo. Of Claire. And Daniel. Laughing. Arms around each other. Michael's blood ran cold. Claire saw the locket in his hand. For a moment, her face flickered. Then she smiled, too wide, too fast. "You were never supposed to find that," she whispered. Michael backed away slowly. "Who are you really?" he asked hoarsely. Claire's smile widened into something ugly. "I'm your sister, Michael. That part's true. But I'm also the one who helped Daniel plan everything." Michael's stomach churned. The betrayal hit harder than Anna and Daniel's combined. "Why?" he rasped. Claire shrugged, almost lazily. "Money. Revenge. Take your pick." "Revenge for what?" Michael shouted, the diner patrons turning to stare. Claire leaned in close. Her voice was a venomous whisper. "You were supposed to die, Michael. So I could have what was always meant for me." "What?" "Your inheritance." Michael blinked. He remembered now. Vaguely. When their biological parents had died, they had left behind land, valuable land. Oil had been discovered there years later. The money from selling it had been put in a trust fund. Michael's trust fund. And Claire? Nothing. Michael stumbled back, everything crashing down at once. The missing clues. The twisted looks Claire sometimes gave him. The way she had found him just a little too easily. It had all been a setup. Again. "You're just like them," Michael said bitterly. Claire laughed. "No, Michael. I'm worse." Before he could react, she pulled a knife from her jacket and lunged. Michael dodged, the blade grazing his arm. He grabbed a chair and swung it, knocking Claire off balance. The diner erupted into chaos, people screaming, diving for cover. Michael bolted for the door, blood streaming from his arm. Claire chased after him, relentless, furious. Out in the parking lot, Michael found his second wind. He dashed into the woods, heart hammering, lungs burning. Branches tore at his skin. Roots tripped his feet. But he didn't stop. Not this time. Claire's footsteps pounded behind him, getting closer. "You can't run forever, Michael," she screamed. "You're mine." Michael's mind raced. He needed a plan. Fast. Up ahead, he spotted a ravine. Steep. Dangerous. But maybe, just maybe. He sprinted faster, leading Claire straight toward it. At the last second, he veered left, grabbing a sturdy branch. Claire didn't see the edge in time. With a terrified shriek, she tumbled over the side, disappearing into the trees below. Silence. Michael collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. It was over. Again. Hours later, after the police dragged Claire's battered body out of the ravine, alive but arrested. Michael sat alone by the roadside, an emergency blanket wrapped around his shoulders. A young officer brought him a cup of coffee. "You're lucky," the officer said. "Some people don't survive this kind of betrayal twice." Michael gave a hollow laugh. "Luck has nothing to do with it," he said. "It's survival." That night, Michael checked into a cheap motel 2 towns over. He didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, wondering if he would ever truly be safe. Or if the past would keep finding him, no matter how far he ran. In the end, he knew one thing for certain. He couldn't run forever. He had to face it. All of it. He had to find out the whole truth about his past, his real family, and the secrets buried even deeper than the ones Daniel and Anna had tried to hide. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. Michael left the motel before sunrise. No goodbye. No looking back. Just the open road stretching endlessly ahead. The air was crisp and cold, the sky smeared with pink and gold. He had no clear plan, just a direction, north. Away from Westbridge. Away from Claire. Away from every betrayal that had nearly killed him, twice. But deep down, he knew something. He couldn't outrun the past. Not until he understood it. Not until he knew everything. He stopped at a dusty old library in a nearly abandoned town called Cross Hollow. Barely anyone lived there anymore. Just a few old men who spent their days smoking cigars outside the gas station, and teenagers who dreamed of escaping. Perfect. Exactly the kind of place where secrets could still survive, hidden in the dust and forgotten files. Michael spent hours digging through public records, adoption files, property records, and newspapers older than he was. Most of it led nowhere. But then, tucked away inside a water-stained cardboard box, he found it. A news clipping from 25 years ago. Fire destroys farmhouse, 2 children survive. The article was short. The fire had been ruled an accident. A faulty kerosene heater. The parents, John and Evelyn Brooks, had perished. The children, Michael and Claire, were found wandering nearby, dazed but alive. But something about the article nagged at him. The language felt off. Detached. Clinical. Too clean. Too convenient. Like someone had wanted it to sound like a simple tragedy. Michael traced his fingers over the photo attached to the article, a blurry black and white image of the smoldering ruins. In the background, almost invisible, was the faint outline of a man in a hat, watching from the tree lean. His face was turned away. But something about the stance, casual, almost proud, made Michael's stomach twist. This wasn't just an accident. This was planned. And whoever had done it, had been watching. Michael needed answers. Real ones. Not from dusty newspapers. Not from half-truths. From people who had been there. He found her name buried in the adoption records, Martha Green. The social worker assigned to his and Claire's case after the fire. Now retired. Still living in a nearby town. Michael didn't hesitate. He got in his car and drove. Martha Green's house was small, neatly kept, with white roses blooming along the fence. Michael stood on the porch for a long time before knocking. When the door finally creaked open, an elderly woman peered out, her gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Her eyes were sharp as knives. "You're him," she said immediately. Michael blinked. "You recognize me?" Martha nodded slowly. "How could I forget?" she murmured. "Come in." Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish and old paper. Michael sat stiffly on the floral-patterned couch while Martha poured tea with trembling hands. "I knew one day you'd come," she said. "You want the truth." Michael nodded. Martha sighed. "I wasn't supposed to tell you. It was all covered up. Buried." She looked at him, her eyes dark with old guilt. "But you deserve to know." The story spilled out like poisoned water. The fire wasn't an accident. It had been arson. Set deliberately. And the man who had orchestrated it? Not a stranger. Not a thief. Family. Their uncle, Jacob Brooks, had been after the farmland for years. When John and Evelyn refused to sell, Jacob decided to take it by force. A fire. 2 deaths. 2 orphans. And the land, unclaimed, ripe for the taking. But the plan hadn't gone perfectly. Michael and Claire had survived. The insurance company had frozen the trust fund until the children came of age. Jacob had been furious. He couldn't touch the money. He couldn't touch the land. So he tried another way. He arranged their adoptions, carefully, quietly, making sure Claire would fall through the cracks, while Michael was placed somewhere safe. Too safe. Hidden. Controlled. But Jacob hadn't worked alone. He had helpers. Some willing. Some blackmailed. Including Daniel. Including Claire, though she had only reconnected with Jacob later, after years in the system, bitter and angry. Martha's voice broke. "I tried to protect you," she whispered. "I fought to keep you safe. But, the system was too big. Too corrupt. Michael sat in stunned silence. Everything made sense now. Daniel's betrayal. Claire's hatred. Even Anna's role, she had been part of it too, probably promised a share of the inheritance once Michael was dead. He had been a pawn his entire life. Michael stood. His hands trembled, but not from fear. From rage. Burning, righteous rage. Jacob Brooks was still alive. And he had started this nightmare. Michael wasn't going to run anymore. He was going to end it. That night, Michael camped out in his car, staring up at the stars. The wind whispered through the trees. The ghosts of his past stirred. His parents. The life he had lost. And somehow, in that darkness, a strange peace settled over him. He wasn't just a victim. Not anymore. He was a survivor. A fighter. And he was going to take back what was his. No matter what it cost. The next morning, Michael drove to the town where Jacob lived. It wasn't hard to find him. The man was practically a local king. Owned half the businesses. Ran the council. Donated to churches just enough to keep his halo polished. On the surface, Jacob Brooks was a pillar of the community. But underneath? Rotten to the core. Michael could feel it the moment he stepped onto the manicured streets. Fake smiles. Whispers behind hands. Fear. Jacob ruled with power and secrets. Michael needed a plan. He couldn't just walk up and accuse Jacob. The man had influence, money, friends in high places. He needed proof. And luck. Michael found the perfect place to start, Jacob's old hunting cabin, deep in the woods. A place no one talked about. A place everyone pretended didn't exist. Where secrets were stored. Where mistakes were buried. It took hours of hiking, but finally, Michael found it, a sagging wooden structure half swallowed by the forest. The door was locked. Michael picked it with a rusty nail. Inside, the cabin smelled of mildew and dust. Cobwebs clung to the ceiling. Mice scattered in the corners. But in the back, behind a false wall, Michael found it. Boxes. Dozens of them. Files. Photos. Letters. Evidence. Proof. Jacob's whole dirty empire laid bare. Michael's hands shook as he flipped through the files. There were records of payouts. Blackmail letters. Fake adoption papers. And, most damning of all, a journal. Jacob's own words. Boasting about the fire. About the necessary sacrifice. About how no one would ever know. Michael smiled grimly. He had everything he needed. Now it was just a matter of timing. That night, Jacob Brooks stood at a podium, smiling for cameras, shaking hands with politicians at a charity gala. A Man of the Year award hung around his neck. Flashbulbs popped. People applauded. And then, the big screen behind him flickered. Michael's voice boomed over the speakers. Jacob Brooks, he said coldly. You're not a hero. You're a murderer. The screen lit up with scanned pages of the journal. Photos of the cabin. Copies of the adoption frauds. The room went silent. The applause died. Jacob's smile froze. His face turned the color of ash. Panic rippled through the crowd. Someone screamed. Police rushed forward. Michael watched from the shadows, heart pounding. Jacob tried to run. He didn't get far. The officers tackled him to the ground, the Man of the Year award clattering to the floor. Handcuffs clicked shut. Jacob screamed curses, threats, desperate denials. But it was over. Finally. Outside, under the cold stars, Michael let out a long, shaking breath. He felt lighter. Like the chains around his chest had finally snapped. He wasn't a victim anymore. He was free. But even as Jacob was dragged away, Michael knew the scars would never fully fade. Some ghosts don't vanish. They live inside you. Whispering. Warning. Reminding you that survival isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering who you are. And fighting for it. Every single day. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Spectators. Whispering voices like 1,000 bees trapped in a jar. Everyone wanted to witness the downfall of Jacob Brooks, the man who had once ruled over their town like a god. Michael sat silently in the back row, hidden beneath a baseball cap. He didn't care about the spectacle. He didn't care about the headlines. He just needed one thing. Closure. The trial moved fast. Jacob's empire crumbled overnight. Once his journal had surfaced, once the proof of arson, fraud, bribery, and blackmail was out in the open, even his most loyal allies abandoned him. In the end, Jacob didn't even try to deny it. He cut a deal to avoid a lifetime in prison, confessing to everything. The fire. The murders. The manipulation. Everything Michael had suspected, and more. But Jacob said one thing in his final statement that stuck with Michael. I never meant for the boy to survive. The word slithered through Michael's mind like a snake. He hadn't just been collateral damage. He had been a target. From the very beginning. The judge sentenced Jacob to 40 years without parole. The room erupted into cheers, then tears. Families Jacob had hurt. Lives he had destroyed. Michael watched quietly. There was no joy in revenge. Only an aching emptiness where hope should have been. When the reporters mobbed him outside, flashing cameras and shouting questions, Michael simply said, I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who survived. Then he walked away. 3 months later. A new beginning. The morning sun spilled through the window of the small cabin Michael now called home. Nestled deep in the mountains, far from the chaos of the city, it was a place of peace. No sirens. No betrayals. Just the quiet hum of life, birdsong, wind in the trees, the smell of pine and earth. Michael rose early every day. Chopping wood. Fishing in the stream. Learning to grow his own food. Simple things. Real things. For the first time in his life, he wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was living. But healing wasn't easy. Some nights, he woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, reliving the nightmare of being buried alive. Other nights, he heard Claire's voice, broken, furious, echoing in his dreams. Sometimes he questioned everything. Could he have saved her? Could he have saved any of them? Guilt was a heavy ghost. But Michael had learned something important. You can survive the fire. You can escape the grave. But you have to choose to live. Every single day. One chilly afternoon, as Michael was repairing a broken fence post, a battered old Jeep rumbled up the dirt road. He tensed instinctively, old habits dying hard. But when the door opened, he saw her. Anna. Not the scheming Anna who had once tried to bury him alive. A different Anna. Thin. Pale. Eyes hollow with regret. She held up her hands, empty. I'm not here to hurt you, she said softly. I just needed to say I'm sorry. Michael didn't speak. He let her talk. Anna told him everything. How Jacob had blackmailed her with secrets from her past. How she had fallen into debt, desperate, scared. How she had convinced herself that Michael was just collateral, not a real person, not someone she would ever have to face again. Until she saw him climb out of that grave. Alive. Fighting. "I don't expect forgiveness," Anna whispered, tears streaking her dirt-smudged face. "I just wanted you to know, you changed me." She placed a crumpled envelope on the ground between them. Cash. All she had left. Blood money. "Maybe you can use it to build something better." She turned and walked away before Michael could respond. He stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he picked it up. Not because he needed the money. Because it was a reminder. Even the worst people could change. Maybe not completely. Maybe not enough. But sometimes, just enough to make a difference. 6 months later. A life rebuilt. The small cabin had transformed into something more. A home. A refuge. Michael had added a garden, a workshop, even built a second cabin down the hill. Not for himself. For others. Word had gotten out about the man in the woods who helps people start over. Former addicts. Survivors of abuse. Runaways. People with nowhere else to go. Michael didn't ask questions. He just gave them a place to heal. A place to learn. A place to fight for life again. One evening, sitting around a fire pit with 3 teenagers and an old veteran with shaking hands, Michael told his story for the first time. He didn't glamorize it. He didn't make himself a hero. He just told the truth. How he had been buried alive. How betrayal had nearly broken him. How survival had demanded not just strength, but forgiveness. Not forgiveness for the ones who hurt him. Forgiveness for himself. For being vulnerable. For being scared. For being human. As the fire crackled, one of the teenagers, a girl with haunted eyes, whispered, "How did you not give up?" Michael smiled, a slow, tired smile. "I did," he said honestly. "I gave up 100 times. But every time, I woke up the next morning, and chose to keep going." He poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks swirling into the dark. That's the secret. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to choose to stand back up. 1 year later. Full circle. The day Michael visited the graveyard was cold and gray. He found his parents' headstone under a leaning oak tree, half hidden by ivy. John and Evelyn Brooks. Beloved parents. He knelt down, brushing the leaves away with trembling hands. For a long time, he said nothing. Just sat with them. Finally, he spoke. "I'm okay," he whispered. "I made it." A gust of wind stirred the trees, and Michael smiled. Not because he thought they could hear him. But because he needed to say it. He needed to know he wasn't lost anymore. "I just needed to say I'm sorry." Michael didn't speak. He let her talk. Anna told him everything. How Jacob had blackmailed her with secrets from her past. How she had fallen into debt, desperate, scared. How she had convinced herself that Michael was just collateral, not a real person, not someone she would ever have to face again. Until she saw him climb out of that grave. Alive. Fighting. "I don't expect forgiveness," Anna whispered, tears streaking her dirt-smudged face. "I just wanted you to know, you changed me." She placed a crumpled envelope on the ground between them. Cash. All she had left. Blood money. "Maybe you can use it to build something better." She turned and walked away before Michael could respond. He stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he picked it up. Not because he needed the money. Because it was a reminder. Even the worst people could change. Maybe not completely. Maybe not enough. But sometimes, just enough to make a difference. 6 months later. A life rebuilt. The small cabin had transformed into something more. A home. A refuge. Michael had added a garden, a workshop, even built a second cabin down the hill. Not for himself. For others. Word had gotten out about the man in the woods who helps people start over. Former addicts. Survivors of abuse. Runaways. People with nowhere else to go. Michael didn't ask questions. He just gave them a place to heal. A place to learn. A place to fight for life again. One evening, sitting around a fire pit with 3 teenagers and an old veteran with shaking hands, Michael told his story for the first time. He didn't glamorize it. He didn't make himself a hero. He just told the truth. How he had been buried alive. How betrayal had nearly broken him. How survival had demanded not just strength, but forgiveness. Not forgiveness for the ones who hurt him. Forgiveness for himself. For being vulnerable. For being scared. For being human. As the fire crackled, one of the teenagers, a girl with haunted eyes, whispered. "How did you not give up?" Michael smiled, a slow, tired smile. "I did," he said honestly. "I gave up 100 times. But every time, I woke up the next morning, and chose to keep going." He poked the fire with a stick, sending sparks swirling into the dark. That's the secret. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to choose to stand back up. 1 year later. Full circle. The day Michael visited the graveyard was cold and gray. He found his parents' headstone under a leaning oak tree, half hidden by ivy. John and Evelyn Brooks. Beloved parents. He knelt down, brushing the leaves away with trembling hands. For a long time, he said nothing. Just sat with them. Finally, he spoke. "I'm okay," he whispered. "I made it." A gust of wind stirred the trees, and Michael smiled. Not because he thought they could hear him. But because he needed to say it. He needed to know he wasn't lost anymore. On the way back to his truck, Michael stopped at another grave. Claire Brooks. No flowers. No visitors. Just a simple stone, weathered by time. Michael placed a small wildflower on her grave. "I'm sorry," he said. "I wish things had been different. Maybe in another life, they could have been brother and sister, not enemies. Maybe in another life, they could have survived together." He stood up, heart heavy but free. Some wounds never heal perfectly. Some ghosts never leave. But life isn't about erasing pain. It's about carrying it without letting it destroy you. Michael drove home under a wide open sky, the horizon burning gold and crimson. Tomorrow would bring new struggles. New scars. But he would face them. Not because he had to. Because he chose to. Because surviving wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning.